Let me tell you straight. After 50 and 60, it's not age that destroys you, it's habits that seem normal. You keep doing things out of inertia, pride, or routine, and then you wonder why your energy fades, why everything hurts, why your patience runs out faster. It's not a mystery. It's accumulated wear and tear labeled, "That's just how I am." The problem is that many doctors look at the body as if you were just an engine. They talk to you about lab results, pills, numbers, and that's fine. But almost no one tells you which behaviors are draining you from the inside. The need to please, mental rigidity, a poor relationship with rest, lack of strength, clinging to what has already expired. The Stoics understood this centuries ago. It's not what happens, it's how you position yourself in front of what happens. If this is your first time here, I'm Gabriel, and today we're going to talk about what you should avoid doing after 50 and 60, even though almost no one tells you directly. Stay until the end, because this isn't entertainment, it's mental order. Let's begin. 1. Still seeking approval. How many decisions are you still making just to get applause from others, even when you don't even feel like it anymore? At this age, it should embarrass you to lose your peace over a serious face, an unanswered message, a what will they say that doesn't pay your bills or take care of you when you're sick. And yet there you are, adjusting yourself, explaining yourself, apologizing, asking permission to exist. It's like living in a house that isn't yours and cleaning all day so the owner doesn't get upset. You tidy up, smile, stay quiet, swallow your words, and when you finally sit down, you realize the house still doesn't feel like home. Other people's approval works the same way. It leaves you exhausted, and even then it never feels like enough. There will always be someone with a new opinion, and you don't have a lifetime to respond to all of them. The common belief goes like this: if I'm nice, if I give in, if I explain myself, they'll value me. No. Sometimes all you accomplish is training others to ask more from you, and the worst part is that you get used to living hunched over, as if your dignity were negotiable. Some people don't want your kindness, they want your availability, and that's not love, that's consumption. The internal cost doesn't show up in a blood test, but you feel it everywhere. Tightness in your chest, irritability, mental fatigue, a thin sadness that creeps into the afternoon like humidity. You become reactive. You depend on other people's gestures to feel okay. One day they look at you warmly and you feel alive. The next day they don't call and you feel invisible. That's not sensitivity. That's a lack of center. Epictetus said it with brutal clarity: if you place your well-being in the hands of what's external, you become a slave. Not because the world is evil, but because you handed over the key. Stoic practice isn't about becoming cold, it's about owning your stance. You can be kind without being needy. You can help without prostituting your energy. You can listen without abandoning your truth. Lower the intensity a bit, and look at yourself honestly. You don't need to convince everyone that you're worthy. You need to stop acting as if your worth is under constant review. Notice where you over-justify yourself, where you say sorry without having done anything wrong, where you stay out of fear of making others uncomfortable. That's the crack where your life is leaking out. And remember this as a simple rule. After a certain age, continuing to beg for approval isn't humility. It's an elegant way of betraying yourself. 2. Neglecting strength and mobility. You notice it in small things, getting up from the couch and feeling like your body takes time to start, climbing a step and hearing your knees like an old door, carrying a bag with exaggerated caution as if everything were fragile. And then you justify it with a dangerous phrase: it's normal, I'm getting older. No, it's not normal. It's common. That's different. In daily life, it shows up as a quiet surrender. You stop bending down and prefer to ask for help. You avoid long walks because they tire you out. You sit more than you move. Your posture shrinks without you noticing, and your breathing becomes shallow. And one day, without drama, your world becomes smaller, fewer places, fewer plans, fewer desires. Not because of age, but because of lost functional capacity. Here's what you don't want to admit. Most of the time, it's not that you lack time, you lack decision. It's not that you can't, it's that you've postponed the basics for years. And the basics aren't about a perfect body, they're about a useful one. In real life, freedom isn't a pretty idea. It's being able to get up on your own, Carry your things, walk without fear, keep your balance, maintain your independence without asking to be rescued. Behind this pattern, there's often pride and avoidance. Pride because you're embarrassed to start from scratch, moving slowly, feeling clumsy. Avoidance because training strength and mobility confronts you with a hard truth. What you don't use shuts down. You distract yourself with 1,000 things, but deep down it's this: you don't want to feel vulnerable. So you choose comfort, which is vulnerability on installments. The Stoics were practical. Marcus Aurelius didn't speak of the body as vanity but as a tool. You don't control the passage of time, but you do control whether you collaborate with your own deterioration or slow it down. The Stoic stance here is simple. Discipline without drama, not to impress but to preserve dignity. Depending on others because of your own neglect isn't bad luck, it's consequence. Shift your perspective with one blunt question. What ability are you letting die out of laziness or fear? You don't need to turn your house into a gym or count reps all day. You need to restore the basic agreement with your body. Move every day, maintain enough strength for real life. Care for your joints like you care for your front door lock. What you don't maintain, one day won't open. And try seeing mobility for what it is, a form of self-respect. When your body feels steady, your mind calms down. When your balance improves, your mood stabilizes. When you can move without complaining, your world expands again. It's not magic, it's alignment between what you say you want and what you train. In the end, age doesn't take your freedom all at once. It charges you in installments every time you choose not to strengthen what supports you. 3. Normalizing stress and poor sleep. You've been led to believe that sleeping little is for strong people and that living tense is for responsible people, and without realizing it, you bought into it. You go to bed with your mind switched on, you wake up tired, and you call it routine. You say that's life, that there will be time to rest later. Let me be clear. When sleep becomes a luxury, your mind becomes a battlefield, and your body pays the price without asking permission. It shows up in details that seem small. You sleep with your phone nearby, as if the world would collapse if you didn't reply. You wake up in the middle of the night and use the time to think, to replay problems, to anticipate arguments that haven't even happened. The next day your mood is short. Little things irritate you. Your patience gets thinner. And worst of all, you get used to it. You get used to living as if you're always late, as if calm were for someone else. It's old conditioning. You were taught to endure, to push through, not to complain, to keep going even while clenching your teeth inside. You were also sold the idea that resting is wasting time and that if you're not on alert, you're careless. It sounds noble, but it's a trap. It's living with your nervous system in emergency mode out of habit, not real danger. And a body that lives that way isn't living. It's surviving. The hidden cost doesn't show up immediately. That's why it fools you. You start losing clarity. Simple things are harder to remember. You become more anxious, more sensitive, more reactive. Your appetite changes, your mood changes, even the way you see others hardens. It's like driving with your foot on the accelerator all the time and then being surprised the engine overheats. It's not bad luck. It's sustained wear disguised as, "That's just how I am." Here's the shift almost no one wants to accept. The problem isn't what's happening outside. It's the internal stance you're taking toward it. You feel obligated to be available, to solve everything, to hold everyone up, and that's why your mind never lets go. But that rigidity isn't responsibility. It's fear of losing control. And when control becomes obsession, it steals the one thing that keeps you whole: your rest, your clarity, your balance. The Stoics understood this plainly. Marcus Aurelius didn't talk about peace as comfort, but as inner mastery. It's not that the world calms down so you can rest. You learn not to live kneeling before the noise. Resting isn't surrender, it's regaining command. It's deciding that your mind won't be a trash can where everyone else's worries get dumped. It's choosing a higher discipline, the discipline of shutting down on time. When you start respecting your sleep again, your life changes internally without spectacle. You don't become perfect, you become stable. And with stability, you see clearly again what deserves your energy and what's just draining it. Here's the simple rule: rest isn't a reward, it's a foundation, and whoever doesn't protect their sleep becomes easy to break. 4. Ignoring your body's signals out of pride. There's a quiet form of arrogance that settles in over the years, the kind that says, "I can handle it," even when your body has been asking for a break for a long time. Something hurts and you stay silent. You get dizzy and you downplay it. You're short of breath and you pretend it's nothing. Not because you're strong, but because you're afraid to admit you're no longer invincible. But your body doesn't negotiate with your pride. It just keeps a record. You see it in everyday life. You keep eating as if your digestion were the same as before. You keep moving as if your joints were made of steel. You keep pushing long days, bad habits, sustained tension, and then you're surprised when one morning you wake up feeling off. You start living with constant discomfort and turn it into part of your personality. You say, "That's just my back, that's just my knees, that's just my blood pressure." No, that's just the way you've been ignoring yourself. The root is almost always emotional. You don't want to feel fragile. You don't want to give the years credit. You don't want to become a burden. And paradoxically, by not listening in time, you move closer to exactly that. You become rigid inside. You force yourself to perform, to hold everything together, to deliver. And the body, which is more honest than your narrative, starts speaking louder. First, it whispers with fatigue. Then it knocks with pain. If you still ignore it, it shouts. Imagine your body like the warning light on a car dashboard. It doesn't turn on to annoy you. It turns on to keep you from breaking down on the road. But you do what many people do. You put tape over the light so you don't have to see it. You distract yourself with work, family, tasks. You keep moving as if the machine were infinite, until one day it's no longer negotiable. A scare, a fall, a crisis, a bill that arrives without warning, and then you listen, but late. The wear isn't only physical, it's mental. Living with constant pain makes you more irritable, more suspicious, more closed off. You start giving up things you once enjoyed. You walk less, go out less, isolate more. Not because you don't want to, but because your body limits you. And you shrink yourself to avoid feeling it. What started as it's nothing ends up becoming a life restricted by small daily denials. There's a perspective shift you need to make today. Listening to your body isn't fear, it's intelligence. It's not about obsession or paranoia. It's about respect. Your body is where you live. If you mistreat it, where will your peace reside? You can't ask for mental calm while ignoring clear signals. You can't talk about dignity while treating yourself like disposable equipment. The Stoic stance here is sober. Don't dramatize, but don't deny. Epictetus insisted on something simple. Take care of what depends on you. Your attention depends on you. Your rest depends on you. The way you eat, move, breathe, slow down when necessary, that depends on you too. You don't need to be a hero. You need to be an adult with yourself, because the pride that makes you ignore yourself today will charge you interest tomorrow. 5. Clinging to draining relationships. It's not just who you're with, it's who you become when you're with them. Some connections don't hit you. They wear you down. They leave you tired without having done anything. They force you to measure your words, walk on eggshells. Justify yourself, give in silently, and you tolerate it because you tell yourself it's too late to change, that it's family, that it's habit, that's just how they are. But a relationship that dims you isn't companionship, it's consumption. It shows up in concrete ways. They call you only when they need something. They unload their problems onto you and then disappear. They disrespect you with jokes, subtle contempt, comments that sound playful but sting. Or worse, they ignore you like a piece of furniture and only remember you when it's convenient. And you stay there, responding, showing up, explaining, as if your presence were a service instead of a choice. The typical excuse sounds elegant. You say you don't want conflict. You say you prefer peace. But often it's not peace. It's fear of being alone. You confuse company with dignity. You confuse tolerance with resignation. You're terrified of setting a boundary and discovering that the only thing holding the relationship together was your patience. So you choose to keep draining yourself because at least it's familiar. The cost is silent, but you pay it. The root goes deeper. There's a part of you that still seeks approval, even with years of life behind you. A part that believes that stepping back makes you bad, that creating distance makes you selfish, that saying no means you're failing. That impulse comes from far back, from growing up believing that wanting tranquility was wrong. But the truth is different. Staying where you're disrespected isn't kindness, It's a lack of self-respect. Think of your energy as water in a bucket. Some people bring water, others drill a hole in it. With the first, the bucket fills and you flourish. With the second, no matter how hard you work, you end up empty. And the absurd part is that sometimes you get angry at yourself for being tired, without realizing you're maintaining relationships that have lost meaning. It's not life exhausting you, it's misplaced permission. The cumulative wear shows up in your character. You become harder, more impatient, more cynical. You start distrusting everyone because you've grown used to dealing with people who use you. Your body registers it too. Tension, insomnia, anxiety, a dull sadness. The soul shrinks when it has to stay on guard all the time. What was meant to be refuge becomes another source of alertness. That's not normal, it's just common. Here's the shift that gives you back control. You're not obligated to carry everything that shares your last name, your history, or your guilt. You can love someone and still choose distance. You can respect without allowing abuse. You can be present without staying stuck. That's maturity. External circumstances don't rule your dignity. Your internal stance does, and your stance is chosen, not inherited, not improvised on impulse. Seneca spoke about protecting tranquility the way you protect a house. If you leave the door open, anyone walks in. If you never set limits, your mental home becomes a hallway. It's not hatred, it's hygiene. It's not about cutting everyone off. It's about seeing who adds peace to your life and who steals it. The right connection doesn't require you to break yourself to fit in. It lets you breathe. Pause and look honestly. With whom do you feel more like yourself? And with whom do you feel less? After which conversations do you feel lighter? And after which do you feel drained? You don't need grand speeches. Sometimes it's enough to stop offering yourself where you're not valued. Dignity isn't negotiated with explanations. It's upheld with decisions. And someone who truly cares about you won't charge you for your calm. 6. Spending energy on old resentments. At this age, resentment is no longer an emotion. It's a fixed expense. It doesn't bring justice, it doesn't protect you, it doesn't give anything back. It just keeps you tied to scenes that already passed, as if your mind were still living in a room that's been empty for years. And the worst part is you call it memory, when in reality, it's repetition. Life asks for presence, and you keep giving hours to a past that has no intention of apologizing. You see it in daily life more than you think. A phrase from someone triggers you and shifts your mood all day. A family gathering tenses you up before you even arrive. A memory appears while you're calm, and suddenly you catch yourself talking alone, rehearsing responses, imagining what you should have said. You travel to the past with incredible precision, yet building the future feels almost impossible. Your mind is trained to return to the same place because it creates an illusion of control. Here's the uncomfortable truth. Sometimes you stay resentful because it's the only thing connecting you to that story. If you let go of the resentment, the identity of victim falls apart. The excuse falls apart. The role that justified you disappears. And then you have to look forward without that shield. Resentment gives you a sense of being right, but it takes your life in return. And you don't have endless decades to keep choosing being right over being at peace. The metaphor is simple. Resentment is like carrying a stone in your pocket to prove someone once pushed you. You think it's evidence, but in practice it's weight. You walk slower, you tire sooner, everything aches, and on top of that you blame the road. No one sees the stone, only you feel it, and only you pay the price. The original injustice may have been real, but the daily burden is now your decision. That weight builds silently. It turns into irritation, distrust, a hardness that steals your tenderness. You become less flexible, less joyful, more reactive. You start interpreting neutral gestures as attacks, and that isolates you without you noticing. It's not that people have gotten worse, it's that you're filtering the world through an old wound. Living that way makes you the guard of your own prison. The break happens when you understand something almost no one accepts. The person who hurt you may not even remember. They may have changed. They may have moved on. Meanwhile, you're still paying emotional interest on a loan that no longer exists. It's not justice, it's extended punishment. And the hardest part? That punishment doesn't reach the guilty party. It reaches you, your sleep, your mood, your health, your ability to love. Here the Stoic principle enters with quiet firmness. Epictetus insisted that what disturbs you isn't the event, but the judgment you keep feeding about the event. It's not about denying what happened. It's about no longer living as if it's still happening. You can't control the past, but you can control whether today you reopen it as a wound or transform it into learning. That's inner mastery, not coldness. When you adopt that stance, something shifts inside. You don't become naive, you become free. You start remembering without burning, looking without clenching your jaw, speaking about it without your pride shaking. You still have boundaries, but you no longer carry poison. And that difference is enormous, because the poison was never for them, it was for you. You can keep your distance and still recover your peace. Pause and look at yourself honestly. What scene are you still replaying as if waiting for revenge? What conversation do you still imagine so you can win? Winning that way is losing. Life won't give you the perfect closure your mind demands. Real closure is something you grant yourself when you decide to stop spending energy on what produces nothing. That decision is maturity. 7. Living without financial order and boundaries. Many people reach their 50s and 60s with the appearance of stability, but internally they live on edge. Not necessarily because they lack money, but because they lack structure. Impulsive spending, support they can't sustain, small debts that turn into chains, an inability to say no when someone asks. Life becomes a constant chase, always something to cover up, something to fix, something to hide. In daily life, it shows up in habits that seem harmless. You buy to soothe anxiety, not out of need. You accept commitments just to look good, and then feel overwhelmed. You lend money out of guilt, and later feel resentment. You avoid checking your accounts because the truth makes you uncomfortable. And when an unexpected expense hits, it shakes you more than it should. Not because of the event itself, but because there's no cushion, mentally or financially, only repeated improvisation. Living without financial order is like having a leak in your roof and getting used to the sound. At first it bothers you, then it seems normal, but meanwhile the house is being damaged from the inside. One day something collapses, and only then do you react. Order isn't a luxury for obsessive people, it's basic maintenance, and at your age maintenance is respect, because it's not just about money, it's about peace. The Stoic stance here is sober. Wealth is a tool, not an identity. The point isn't to become stingy, it's to stop living without limits. Setting a limit isn't being harsh, it's being clear, and clarity saves you from future resentment. Pause and observe. Where do you spend to avoid feeling? Whom do you support just to avoid being seen as the bad one? What fear is keeping you from getting organized once and for all? Looking at your numbers is looking at your reality, and looking at your reality restores inner control. When you can say no calmly, when you can choose intentionally, your life becomes lighter. 8. Postponing important decisions out of comfort. At a certain age, procrastination stops being a bad habit and becomes a form of surrender. Not because you're weak, but because you've grown used to living with what's pending. You know what you need to do, you've known for a long time, but you keep leaving it for later. Change a lifestyle, close a chapter, address a medical issue, make a family decision, set a definitive boundary, and while you postpone it, life slips through your fingers like water. This works silently inside your head. It's not just that you don't act, it's how you justify it. You tell yourself it's not the right time, that you need to handle other things first, that when you have more energy, you'll do it. Months pass, years pass. What's pending becomes part of the scenery, like an old piece of furniture that gets in the way but you've learned to walk around. Only this furniture sits in your mind, taking up space and draining clarity. The common misunderstanding is thinking that postponing brings peace. It doesn't. It brings anesthesia. Real peace comes from deciding. What you postpone doesn't disappear, it settles in. And it settles with a daily cost, even if you don't see it. It steals focus, lightness, presence. You live with a low-level discomfort that never fully shuts off. It doesn't destroy you all at once, it wears you down through accumulation. Postponing decisions is like walking with a stone in your shoe and saying you've gotten used to it. Yes, you can keep walking, but every step irritates you a little more. Over time, you change how you walk, you strain other parts, you create more pain. What seemed manageable ends up affecting everything, and the absurd part is that the solution was to stop, remove the stone and keep going, but you chose comfort instead. There are decisions that don't get easier with time, they get more expensive. and you know it. What stops you is rarely lack of ability. It's fear of initial discomfort, fear of disappointing someone, fear of admitting you were wrong, fear of changing a dynamic. But you're already paying the price of not deciding. You're just paying in invisible installments. Here, the Stoic reminder is clear. Each day that arrives doesn't return. If something depends on you, delaying it is betraying yourself. If it doesn't depend on you, worrying about it is wasting yourself. Clarity doesn't come before the decision. It comes after. Comfort promised rest, but it gave you stagnation. Decision feels uncomfortable for a moment, but it gives you your life back. And here's the truth that doesn't negotiate. What you don't decide today will decide you tomorrow, without your permission. You've reached an age where living halfway makes no sense. Not because time is running out, but because you've seen enough to distinguish what's essential from what's noise. Avoiding these mistakes isn't about becoming rigid or living in fear. It's about stopping the collaboration with your own decline. It's practicing dignity in concrete ways, choosing calm over approval, firmness over excuses, order over improvisation. And above all, stopping the habit of paying with your energy for things that no longer deserve your attention. Real change doesn't put on a show. It shows up quietly. You sleep better because your mind stops arguing with itself. You breathe deeper because your body releases useless tension. You speak differently because you no longer feel the need to justify yourself so much. You move with more confidence because you start treating your strength as a duty to yourself. And there, you recover something simple and powerful. The feeling of being in your place, not by controlling everything, but by holding yourself steady. Now look at yourself without theatrics. How much of what you do today comes from habit rather than conviction? After a certain age, not deciding is also a decision, and almost always the worst one. You don't need more information. You need more clarity. And clarity appears when you dare to cut what's unnecessary without asking permission. Time doesn't negotiate. Energy doesn't multiply through hope. What you don't protect through discipline, you'll lose through obligation. If this content brought you value, subscribe to the channel and turn on notifications. Not out of obligation, but because this kind of clarity is trained, and it keeps you steady when the noise tightens. I want to read you. Write in the comments the phrase, "I am Stoic," and the country you're listening from. I'm Gabriel, and this is the Stoic Garden. 2 videos will appear now so you can keep going deeper. Choose one and continue. Not for entertainment, but for that quiet decision to live with greater inner control. See you in the next one.